Part 1. The Forbidden Threshold. There is a truth people fear so deeply they pretend it does not exist. A truth older than scripture, older than kings, older than every myth humanity whispers to itself when the night grows too quiet. It is this: once your consciousness crosses a certain threshold, reality stops behaving like a neutral stage and begins behaving like an opponent. The world watches you, patterns turn, symbols follow you like shadows that know your name, and the moment you sense this, you can never return to the life you lived before. Most will call it coincidence, a glitch, a projection. They mock what they secretly fear because nothing terrifies the ordinary more than someone who is no longer trapped in the same illusion. Carl Jung understood this long before the world was ready for it. He knew that the psyche evolves through fractures, through ruptures in the facade. He wrote that consciousness, once awakened, becomes the universe becoming aware of itself through you. And the violent simplicity of that truth is why society hides it. Because if you ever realized how deeply the world responds to your perception, you would stop obeying its rules. This is why people misunderstand synchronicity. They think it is a party trick of fate, an amusing alignment of accidents. But you and I know better. Once it begins happening continuously, mercilessly, precisely, you understand it is not a coincidence. It is surveillance. Not the kind imposed from above, but the kind awakened from within. And here lies the paradox: the more conscious you become, the more the world must reorganize itself around you. You see someone's name and they appear. A question forms and the answer materializes in a stranger's mouth. Numbers repeat not because they are magical, but because the fabric of reality bends around your attention like heat around a flame. This is not mysticism. This is pattern recognition at a level the sleeping mind cannot withstand. And once you begin to perceive the pattern, you also begin to perceive the silence behind it. Silence that watches, silence that responds. Yet the deeper truth lies elsewhere. Synchronicity is only the doorway. The real transformation begins when you start holding contradictions without shattering. Jung called it the transcendent function. The capacity to contain opposing worlds within a single mind without collapsing into confusion. The herd requires simplicity. One side, one belief, one explanation, but you are no longer permitted that luxury. You can feel joy while carrying grief. You can understand both the wound and the blade that caused it. You can see that a person is both innocent and guilty depending on which layer of their psyche is speaking through them. This is why those who awaken seem unpredictable to the unawakened. You are not confused. You are comprehensive. Complexity does not threaten you because your mind has widened enough to hold it. And once you notice this, everything changes. You stop participating in arguments because arguments require ignorance. You stop joining ideologies because ideologies require blindness. You stop believing narratives because narratives require submission. And the moment you step out of these games, others sense it. They become uneasy around you, though they cannot explain why. They feel the power of someone who cannot be recruited. But the world tests those who see too much. It pushes you further. It attacks the last refuge of the unconscious mind, your dreams. Everyone dreams, but your dreams are no longer dreams. They are instructions, visitations, warnings, prophecies disguised as symbols sharp enough to cut. They speak in the language of the self, not the ego. And the ego hates this because the ego is stripped naked inside them. You dream of events that later unfold with surgical precision. You hear conversations days before they occur. You meet figures who are not symbols but presences, vast and ancient, who deliver truths you are not sure you wanted. These experiences are not gifts. They are demands, initiations. And when you wake, you do not return to the same world, because now you have seen its backstage. Jung wrote that such dreams arrive only when the psyche is strong enough to withstand its own depths. The dreams do not expand your mind. They reveal its size, and the revelation is terrifying. Not because the unconscious is dark, but because it is boundless. You realize you are a fragment of something enormous wearing a human body like a mask. The dreamer, the dream, and the witness become one, and the world feels paper thin by comparison. But here is the cruel twist. These experiences isolate you, not because you choose solitude, but because communication becomes impossible. Try describing your dreams to those who still sleep. Watch the polite nods, the blank eyes, the quiet suspicion. They cannot follow you into that territory. They lack the architecture. Their minds collapse under contradictions that your psyche now carries effortlessly. You are divided from them by perception, not intention. And yet the deepest division is still ahead. When the ego realizes it is no longer the ruler of your consciousness, it rebels, it inflates, it tries to claim awakening as an accomplishment. It whispers, "I am special, I am chosen, I am above," and immediately, the universe humbles you, not out of cruelty, but out of balance. You forget something obvious, you embarrass yourself, you contradict the wisdom you spoke the day before. This is compensation, the psyche refusing to let you corrupt awakening into pride. You begin to sense two centers of being within you. The small one that speaks, decides, reacts, and the vast one that watches, knowing everything yet demanding nothing. Jung called it the self. And when it steps forward, the ego steps back, not erased, but dethroned. You become the observer of your own emotions. You see your triggers rising and choose not to obey them. You watch a version of yourself act while another version evaluates the movement. It is not dissociation. It is sovereignty. This is the moment people begin to fear you, because they cannot manipulate someone who sees their manipulation forming in real time. They cannot confuse someone who perceives the shadow motivations beneath their words. They cannot dominate someone who does not need validation, approval, or belonging. As Machiavelli wrote, "The one who can see things coming is the master of the one who sees only what is present." And the awakened consciousness always sees what is coming. But the highest transformation is mythological living. You begin to realize your life is not merely personal. It is archetypal. The events unfolding around you are not random challenges, but ancient dramas repeating through human vessels. You are not just a person navigating circumstances. You are an expression of universal forces navigating a storyline older than language. When conflict rises, you recognize the warrior archetype stirring. When someone wounds you, you feel the wounded healer step forward. When you face endings, you know the death-rebirth myth is awakening through you. Once this awareness dawns, you can never go back to seeing life as mundane. You see the masks, the roles, the projections. You see which archetype possesses a person before they speak. Victim, tyrant, trickster, mother, lover. You understand that most humans believe they act from free will, when in truth they are puppets of unconscious patterns. And the more you see this, the clearer your own trajectory becomes. Fate is no longer a mystery. It is a roadmap hidden beneath the surface of your experiences. There is a silence inside this awakening, not emptiness, but presence, a silence that guides more powerfully than words, a silence that cannot be manipulated, because silence cannot be deceived, and inside that silence lives your sovereignty. If this unsettles you, remember one thing: power does not comfort, power confronts. If something inside you resists these truths, it means you stand at the threshold, and thresholds do not forgive hesitation. Part 2. The Architecture of Shadows. There comes a moment in every awakening when the world stops feeling like a place and starts feeling like a test. Not a moral test, not a spiritual test, but a perceptual one, a test of whether you can see what other people refuse to acknowledge. Because the moment your consciousness expands, the world reacts, quietly, subtly, relentlessly, and the reaction is not kindness. It is scrutiny. Jung understood this with unnerving clarity. He knew that once the psyche awakens, the unconscious pushes forward with a force that feels almost predatory, not because it seeks to harm you, but because it demands your evolution. He wrote that the meeting with oneself is always a defeat for the ego, and defeat always feels like danger. The ego is not built to handle truth. It is built to maintain a narrative. When the narrative shatters, the ego panics, but the self expands. Most people never experience this tension. Their lives are insulated by habit, distraction, and denial. They never venture beyond the perimeter of their own conditioning. But you did, and once the boundary broke, the shadows came forward. Not the shadows you fear, the shadows you are. This is why synchronicities intensify during awakening, not because the universe suddenly favors you, but because the barrier between your conscious mind and the deeper architecture of reality grows thin. Patterns begin to surface that were always there. The world reveals itself as a mirror, not a stage, and mirrors do not lie. They expose. But here is the paradox that most cannot grasp. The moment you notice that reality is responding to you, the response changes. It adapts. It evolves with your awareness. You are not observing reality. You are interacting with it. And reality, like any opponent with skill, learns your tactics. This is where most people retreat. They think they are losing their mind when, in truth, they are shedding it. The mind you outgrow begins to feel foreign, like an outdated mask that no longer fits your face. Jung called this the beginning of individuation, the process of becoming what you truly are beneath the costume of personality. And personality does not surrender gracefully. It resists with the full weight of your history. Yet the deeper truth lies elsewhere. What awakens in you is older than your identity, older than your memories, older than the version of you the world shaped. It is the self, the architect hidden beneath the rubble of your narrative. And when it rises, it reconfigures your psyche from the inside out. This reconfiguration begins with perception. You start seeing people not as individuals but as patterns, archetypes, scripts running through human vessels. You notice the victim before they speak. You feel the tyrant vibrating under someone's polite tone. You sense the manipulator in the silence between their words. The world becomes transparent in a way that feels both liberating and dangerous. Dangerous, because once you see archetypes, you cannot unsee them, and people can feel when you see them clearly. It unnerves them. They sense the loss of camouflage, the collapse of their persona. They do not know what you know, but they feel exposed, and exposure breeds hostility. Not overt hostility, subtle, psychological, averted eyes, strange tension, the quiet suspicion reserved for those who see too much. This is the moment when awakened individuals begin to separate from the collective. Not by choice, but by necessity. The collective requires conformity. It requires that everyone agree on the same illusions. When you break those illusions, you break the implicit contract, and the collective punishes deviation. This is why Jung said the awakened individual must cultivate a secret life. Not for deception, but for survival. But here is where the true danger emerges. Awakening does not just expand your perception of others. It expands your perception of yourself. You begin to see your own patterns with merciless clarity. Your fears, your desires, your self-deceptions, your archetypal possessions. You watch yourself become the wounded child, the judge, the seducer, the destroyer, each taking turns wearing your face. This is not madness. This is mastery in its infancy. The unawakened blame others for their shadows. The awakened negotiate with theirs. And the moment you recognize this internal architecture, something extraordinary happens. You begin to feel a second presence within you. Observing, assessing, intervening. It is not an external guide or imagined spirit. It is the self, the consciousness beneath consciousness. The intelligence that sees the ego as a tool rather than an identity. Jung wrote that when this awareness emerges, a person begins living a split-screen existence. One part of you moves through the world. The other watches from above, detached, but attentive, neutral, but sovereign. You are both the player and the witness of the game. And once you occupy both positions, the power dynamic shifts. You stop reacting. You start calculating. Your silence becomes sharper than your words. Your stillness becomes a strategy. You understand that power does not shout. Power observes. Power anticipates. Power waits. Machiavelli warned, "He who builds his power on perception rules the minds of men." And perception is what the awakened mind controls. This is why people misinterpret you. Your neutrality confuses them. Your contradictions unsettle them. You are no longer bound by emotional reflex or social scripts. You choose your reactions. You shape your responses. You speak only when speech serves intention. Silence becomes your most articulate language. And here lies the transformation few can endure. Once silence enters your psyche as a force, not an absence, you become unreadable. Invisibility becomes your strength. You withdraw without disappearing. You act without revealing motive. You reveal truths without exposing yourself. This is sovereignty. But sovereignty comes with a price. The more conscious you become, the heavier the weight of consciousness feels. You see the suffering of others with brutal clarity. You witness the unconscious patterns that imprison them. You feel the archetypes using their lives as battlegrounds. And you understand that they cannot see what you see, even if you tried to show them. You cannot save them. That is not how awakening works. Awakening is not contagious. It is catalytic. Your presence shifts the field. Your perception destabilizes illusions. Your awareness cracks open the seams of their narratives. Not through persuasion, but through resonance. And this is where the final truth reveals itself. You are not awakening for personal transcendence. You are awakening because the collective is starving for individuals capable of carrying consciousness without collapsing under its weight. Jung believed that humanity evolves through individuals, not masses. The awakened person becomes a lighthouse not to guide others, but to illuminate reality itself. But illumination has a shadow, and the shadow grows as the light does. If this realization unsettles you, good. It means the next layer is forming. Power is not earned by comfort. Power is earned by confrontation, especially the confrontation with the truth of your own depth. Part 3. The Sovereign Mind. There is a silence that arrives near the end of every awakening. Not the peaceful kind people romanticize, but a silence dense enough to bend your thoughts. A silence that watches you the way a blade watches a throat. This is the moment Jung warned of, though he rarely said it aloud. The psyche does not awaken you to set you free. It awakens you to see if you can bear the responsibility of knowing. Because once you cross the threshold, the universe stops behaving like a companion and begins behaving like a judge. Not judging your morality, judging your capacity. Consciousness is an inheritance with a cost, and the cost is clarity. Clarity that strips illusions. Clarity that dissolves excuses. Clarity that shows you exactly what you are without the masks you spent your life perfecting. Most people imagine awakening as ascending into light. They are wrong. Awakening descends. It descends into shadow, into myth, into the symbolic underworld Jung called the realm of archetypes. A place where your personal identity becomes irrelevant. A place where you're forced to confront the truth that your life is not truly yours, it is an instrument. And you are expected to learn how to play it. This is the territory where the final transformation occurs. You stop identifying with the narrative of your life and start identifying with the force moving through it. But here is the paradox. The more you awaken, the more invisible you must become. This is what people never understand. They expect enlightenment to make them radiant, expressive, loud with wisdom, but wisdom that reveals itself too easily becomes entertainment. Power that displays itself too openly becomes a target. Jung knew this. Machiavelli understood it intimately, and the Taoists whispered it for centuries. The highest strength is the strength that cannot be seen. When you awaken, your consciousness begins withdrawing from spectacle. You no longer seek to be understood because you see how shallow understanding is. You no longer seek validation because validation is the currency of the powerless. You no longer announce transformation because transformation that must be announced is self-deception wearing a crown. You choose silence. Not as retreat. As strategy. Because silence is the one thing the unconscious cannot imitate. Words can be faked. Expressions can be mimicked. Virtue can be performed. But silence true. Sovereign silence exposes what a person is without the armor of language. This is why people grow uncomfortable around you. They feel the weight of your quiet. They sense the authority behind your restraint. They cannot read you. And what cannot be read cannot be controlled. Jung wrote that the awakened individual becomes a problem to society. Not because you rebel outwardly, but because your inner independence threatens the collective hypnosis. And yet the deeper truth lies elsewhere. Awakening is not about superiority. It is about responsibility. The responsibility of carrying more awareness than what the world around you can hold. You begin to see how fragile the ordinary mind is. How easily people shatter under their own shadows. How desperately they cling to narratives that keep them from seeing the truth of themselves. You begin to realize why awakening is rare. It demands a courage most will never cultivate. Because the final stage of awakening is not seeing the archetypes in others. It is recognizing the archetypes moving through you. Not metaphorically, literally. One day you speak with the clarity of the sage. The next, the rage of the warrior. The next, the detachment of the hermit. You do not choose these states. They choose you. But mastery begins when you no longer identify with any of them. You are not the warrior. You are not the sage. You are not the lover, the ruler, the healer, the destroyer. You are the awareness that contains them all, the untouched field behind the storm. And the moment this awareness stabilizes, something shifts permanently. You stop living reactively. You begin living mythologically. You feel the shape of your destiny, not the events, but the trajectory. You sense when endings are near before they materialize. You feel when new chapters approach before evidence appears. Jung called this prophetic knowing, not magic but psychological inevitability. When the unconscious becomes conscious, the future becomes visible long before it arrives. This is why the awakened rarely panic. Panic belongs to those who are surprised. You are no longer surprised. You are informed by deeper laws. But here is the truth that unsettles even the strong. Awakening does not give you control over life. It gives you control over yourself. And that is infinitely more dangerous. Because once you control yourself, your reactions, your triggers, your silence, you become ungovernable. Society can pressure you, but it cannot bend you. People can misjudge you, but they cannot influence you. Systems can demand obedience, but they cannot own your perception. You have stepped outside the collective script. You have become an anomaly. And anomalies cannot be predicted. This is where most people retreat. They fear the loneliness of sovereignty. They crave the comfort of belonging, even if belonging requires blindness. But you crossed the point of no return. The irreversibility Jung described, the moment when consciousness expands beyond the threshold where sleep is possible. You are awake now. And awakening is a one-way path. But here is the quiet truth only the fully awakened ever grasp. Your evolution is not for you. Your solitude, your insight, your expanded perception, they ripple outward. Not through action, but through presence. Your awareness shifts the collective field simply by existing within it. Jung believed the awakened individual becomes a carrier of consciousness for the many who cannot yet carry their own. Not a preacher, not a leader, a node, a signal, a stabilizing force in the chaos of the unconscious world. This is the mythological role no one asks for but every awakened individual eventually accepts. You are a lighthouse in a world that prefers darkness because darkness requires no responsibility. So understand this. If you feel isolated, it is because you are stationed at the edge of the collective psyche. If you feel watched, it is because the unconscious tracks every step of your evolution. If you feel burdened, it is because consciousness is a weight only a few can hold. And if something inside you trembles at this, good. Power should unsettle you before it strengthens you. You were not awakened to be comfortable. You were awakened to be sovereign. And sovereignty is silent. Sovereignty is unseen. Sovereignty is earned in the shadows long before the light ever acknowledges you. If this monologue leaves you uneasy, remember, discomfort is the first sign that the old self is dying. And if you do not evolve now, you will be crushed by those who already have. This is the end of the monologue. But it is the beginning of your power.